All right, you know what that sound means. KBO Chats Live coming to you live, of course. Wouldn't have it any other way. Sam Pasco alongside Eric Halterman breaking down today's brand new slate of KBO action during Major League Baseball opening day. That is correct. There's a rain delay, but we're not delaying our coverage here. We'll adjust the time, 6 o'clock. That was indeed Eric's idea. Maybe our oracle today, going to figure out all our KBO picks. Eric, how are your prediction skills feeling today?
Yeah, feeling pretty good. I mean, I nailed yesterday that we were going to have a rain delay for precisely this minute, and that's when we scheduled the show 1 hour earlier. We'll see who wants to come talk some KBO during a brief break in MLB action. I'm sure everybody's as excited as we are to see MLB coming back today. Fun to watch some, 99 mile per hour fastballs and all that, but we still got a job to do over here, so we'll be watching KBO, covering KBO as long as everybody's here to pay attention. So as far as I know, we're here the rest of the year as long as there's a crowd. So
yeah, and the great thing about KBO, it has kind of largely undiscovered for you making picks. There's a lot of edge to be had. Eric's the go-to guy with that. We'll break it all down right here. It's a great league, only 5 games a day, 6 days of the week. It's pretty cool, so definitely stay with it if you're a fan of fantasy and betting. Speaking of our pick'em contest, we're gonna get Eric's picks on all these here. Brand new redesigned site here. We're getting up and running. We're gonna have Eric make sure we break down each series and then give us our picks. So we're gonna enter them as we go along. So first up, we're gonna want to go with the LG Twins series as we head over to our daily lineups on rotowire.com. Twins taking on the Deucin Bears. In case I didn't say this, rain out both yesterday and the day before that in the KBO, so pretty much a fresh slate, not a lot of too much recapping action. But Eric, how do we feel about these pitchers here? Woo-Chan Cha, backup with the Twins in their big league club, facing off against the powerful Bears offense.
Yeah, of all the games, this one is reasonably likely to go forward. As you said, we've had 9 of the 10 games rained out the last 2 days. The Giants and Heroes today can't get rained out because they're in a dome. It looks like rain is a factor in the games, but no, we're nowhere near the near guaranteed rainouts that we had yesterday. This one looks like a decent chance it gets played compared to the rest. So it's a good place to start. We got the battle between 2 teams that share a stadium, James Hill Baseball Stadium in Seoul. And we've got a pair of lefties who aren't all that frightening on the mound. Woo-Chan Cha for the Twins is coming off a really terrible stretch. He was decent enough on the season. The ERA isn't great, but his strikeouts and walks are pretty close to the league average. Pretty decent number 3-4 starter type, judging by his season overall. He didn't give up any runs last time out, though that was against the Eagles. Debatable how much we count that. And I think he only struck out 1 in that one. It wasn't like it was a dominant start by any means. But the 3 starts before that, he was terrible. ERA of 16.87 and a whip of almost 3 over those 3 starts. He got knocked around by the Bears twice in that stretch. It doesn't bode all that well for him. You might say that being a lefty would give him an advantage against the Bears, and maybe it does, but you've seen what he's been able to do with that advantage, which is not much at all. So I'd be a big fan of the Bears bats, even the left-handed ones, Jose Fernandez, Jailo, Jaewon Kim, that 2 through 4 stretch. I'd be interested in them. I'd be interested in their top right-handers tonight as well, Kunwoo Park and Kyungmin Her. So I would expect a lot of runs from that side.
Yes, in case you're just tuning in, this is KBO Chats Live. We'll adjust the time with MLB opening day, breaking down all the Korean baseball games you need to know about today. Switching now over to that Bears offense. You're talking about them potentially lefty on lefty, maybe a slight advantage, but it's really never in the opposing pitcher's advantage when you have Jose Miguel Fernandez on your team. He was on a 2-game multi-hit streak. When you look at that, 5 games in a row with 2 hits exactly. He broke that one in his first game against Kiwoom. Do you think he can be poised for a great night against Chan Cha in the opener?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that poor game against Kiwoom was the game against Eric Jokic, which understandable. That's a really tough lefty, top 2 lefty in the league right now, the way this season has gone. So never fault the guy too much for going hitless against Jokic. I haven't checked Fernandez's splits lately, but when I was looking a couple weeks ago, he hadn't homered at all against lefties, or very infrequently, if at all, but his batting average is still quite good. And that's the main thing you get him for anyway, is you expect 2 for 4 basically every night. So I think very good chance of multiple hits in this one.
All right, let's get to our pick then. Who are we going to go with? Bears, Twins, money line, and a total.
Yeah, I'm gonna side with the Bears in this one because Cha has really struggled against them. I haven't talked about Hee-Kwan Yu yet, but not a whole lot of confidence in him either. He's got the lowest strikeout rate among qualified starters, and his ERA isn't as terrible as you would think, given that. He does keep runs off the board at an okay clip, but he allows batters to hit 315 off him, which is not anywhere close. That's not anywhere close to good. It's second worst among qualified starters. So with 2 weak lefties out there, or mediocre at best lefties, I would side with the over, even though this is played in the most pitcher-friendly park in the league. I just don't think either of these starters can shut down any lineup really. At best, you might see you give up 3 runs in 5 innings while only striking out 2 or something. So I would side Bears, and I would expect a lot of runs.
Yeah, when you look at those 2 starters' ERAs right there, I mean, you got to favor the Bears considering their record. But when you look at those ERAs, you like the over there. Moving now to the Kiwoom. Where is it here? Here it is, Kiwoom Lotte, because we're going to question about which game will be rained out tomorrow. So we can see here on rotowire.com, the likelihood here of each game being rained out. The one game that will not be rained out for sure is this Kiwoom Lotte series because it is in a dome. So let's look at them here. Eric, what do we see with these starting pitchers? I still see, high ERAs, and I would think maybe over, and then you tend with the Heroes just because of what they've done recently, or the Giants maybe picking up some steam?
Yeah, that would definitely be the direction I'd be looking on this one. And again, because it's the lone dome stadium in KBO, if you're playing daily fantasy and not staying up until all hours of the night, definitely would load up in this game. Wouldn't hate loading up on either side, but I would especially load up on Heroes bats. They'll be more expensive because they're better. Their 1 through 5 are guys that I'm comfortable with most of the time. Although Dongwon Park has fallen off after being the best offensive catcher early in the year. He's just back from a back injury. He had missed some time, which may have explained his slump. But I'd be a fan of the Heroes bats. Sewong Park is average-ish strikeouts and walks, and he had there's maybe something there. He's 24. That's again, he's got a decent enough potential with that, but he's just given up way too many homers. Maybe over a longer stretch, you see that come down and he settles in, ERA mid-high 4s. Nothing special, though. Last year, I think he did have a better ERA, despite pretty average-ish strikeout and walk numbers, but he didn't give up homers. This year, he's given up a ton, and you see it explode. So I'd be happy to use most of the Heroes' top bats, any of those top 4, maybe even top 5, like I said. Jung-Hoo Lee, always good against anybody but the best pitchers. Their young right fielder who has been one of the best contact hitters in the league ever since he debuted at age 20. And now in his 4th year, he's added power also. He never hit more than 6 homers in a season, but he already has doubled that this year. The number 3 hitter, Jung-Hoo Lee, always a good play. I like pairing him with Kyung Chang So, the leadoff man, to get a pair of lefties against a shaky righty. But also Byung-Ho Park, their right-handed cleanup hitter, and Ha-Seong Kim, their shortstop, who hits number 2 and who might be coming to the MLB next year. Those guys can hit against anybody, and I'd be happy to play them against Park in this one. On the opposite side, Tate Choi for the Heroes was cruising along with a ERA of 3.68 and a whip of 1.16 through his first 10 starts, and then it absolutely fell apart. His last two starts give up well over a run per inning, a whip of 2.5, and 3 strikeouts go with just 6 walks. I mean, it's hard to have much of a worse stretch than that. That maybe Wu Chan Cha for the Twins we talked about earlier is similar, but some pretty terrible recent starts. They did give Choi a break. They sent him down for 10 days. He was supposed to start, I think, 2 days ago, but that was rained out, as was yesterday. So it's maybe that rest helps him. Again, if you're setting lineups early and don't know which games are going to play, I'd be comfortable enough starting him, mostly because the Giants are pretty mediocre offense. And he has been pretty decent for most of his career. He's a righty. The Giants are extremely righty heavy. So I'd be comfortable-ish if you have to set that lineup and aren't able to see which of the other games go through. I don't hate playing Choi, even though, man, that's a pretty bad recent stretch.
In case you are just tuning in, I'm seeing some more comments pop up here. This is KBO Chats Live. We are taking your questions during this MLB rain delay. Yankees Nationals, always fun, always great to see opening day come back. But we are talking KBO. It's been back for a while, going to be continue into November. We're seeing Barry, a regular, coming back. Find you guys on YouTube. Yes, we're both on YouTube and Periscope. Let's see the classic DX. They always get great reaction from the crowd here. And we're talking everything, what we look for. We talked about the Bears Twins leaning towards the Bears because of that offense, and the over because of these two mediocre pitchers we're seeing go up against each other. And now we're talking about this Kiwoom Lotte series that is in a dome, so will be played tonight because we have had some weather concerns about the past couple of days of action. I got a question here about, is KBO easier to play and analyze than MLB? And I don't know if I'd say it's easier, but there's definitely a lot less to look at in terms of number of games and players. Maybe, Eric, you can explain to the crowd a little bit what you look for. You talk a lot about strikeouts and walks, and we see some recent performances where both these guys maybe haven't had the best numbers in that department, especially Choi. When you look at those walks, in the past 2 games, what exactly are you looking for when you analyze these KBO picks?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it's probably harder to analyze in a lot of ways just because the amount of available data, and especially English language data, is a lot less. There are some very good sites with some decent amount of stats out there, and I'm very thankful to have them. But, the ridiculous explosion of data in MLB down to like StatCast type stuff, we know the exact revolutions per minute of every pitch. All this crazy stuff where you can really dig in and say, he had one bad game. Is he fundamentally a different guy than he was before, or did he just have one bad game? The granularity that we're able to get with MLB these days is not matched in the KBO, especially for someone like me who unfortunately doesn't know Korean even after watching the league for a couple months. So in a way, it's harder to analyze, but I wouldn't say it's harder to win because it's harder to analyze for everybody. And I think especially in like daily fantasy where a lot of people were just playing because they want to just play anything. I think in a league where most people don't enter it knowing who the Max Scherzers and Garrett Coles of the world are, I think you get a big advantage just by knowing something, coming here, subscribing to RotoWire, anything like that. If you put in some effort in KBO, you're likely to be ahead of the crowd. In MLB, you can certainly get ahead of the crowd, but I think it takes more work just because, again, there's so much out there. So I think it's harder to say quite as much and in quite as much detail with the KBO, but if you feel like you've got a handle on it at all, I think you're pretty well placed. I don't know if it's felt that way from your end, but
no, well put there. I'd have to agree. One great site, of course, is rotowire.com. We use this for all the graphics here. And, you don't have to try very hard to watch the show here. We break it down. We try to make it very clear, going series by series. And, Eric, you've been great giving the people exactly what they need to know about the starting pitching, the key offense. So definitely stay with us here on the show every Monday and Thursday as we break down the brand new slate of action. So wrapping back up the second series we're looking at, Lotte and Kiwoom. People are talking about the Kiwoom bats being better than Lotte's bats. and potentially Addison Russell coming into play a little later in this series. So let's get your pick and thoughts on that. Is Kiwoom enough, that offense enough for you to take them with our third pick here?
Yeah, I think they're enough better than the Giants that I would side with them. I think most games this year, Juan Tate has been better than Se-Woong Park. The last couple, he's been worse than just about everybody. But I'm going to hope that bounce back is enough, and I think I pick the Heroes. Just better team, top to bottom. And I think I go over. I think Heroes can score enough off Park, and I think there's a small chance that Choi, allows 8 runs in 2 innings or something yet again. So I think I'd go Heroes and over.
Here's over, and SG here is asking about the first 5. Do you think Choi can stay stable enough through those 5 innings? Actually, going back to his page, he hasn't even gone that deep. Only 4 innings in those 2 horrible starts that we were looking at. Is that let me get your thoughts on that first 5 aspect. Will he be able to go back 7, 6, 7 like he's done in the past, or are we looking at a shorter start?
Right. I think if the Heroes lose, it's because Choi has another one of those. So there's definitely some risk. But I think if you're comfortable enough picking the Heroes, I think you're picking them because you think Choi can get back at least to some semblance of his former self. So I don't think I'd be any less confident in them over the first 5 than over the game as a whole. I think he's better than Park, and I think I'd side with them, even though he's on a quite terrible run over his last 2.
Fair. And DX asking about, explain the contests to you once more. As you can see here, we are on worldbaseballpick'em.com, our little graphic here as we go through each game. There's 2 contests, KBO Daily, that's where you make 10 picks, and that's what we're doing right now on each game, Moneyline and over, and then 1 or more, which we will get to at the end. Eric's 3 best picks, which I believe did go 3-0 last time we chatted. So hear those out, and as long as one of those or more is correct, your streak grows, and that's redeemable for various prizes. So we are working very hard to get that for you here as we are going through KBO Daily, which is 10 picks, and you try to get as many as you can correct. And Eric, follow along with these picks. Eric has been pretty spot on, as he was with the rain delay timing. So moving on now, next series we have is probably the best one. We have up to the NC Dinos taking on the KT Wiz. 2 foreign pitchers, Drew Rosinski and William Cuevas, taking the ball. Eric, I see Rosinski's name and I see the Dinos and I think, okay, let's automatically go with them. But the KT Wiz recently have had some great offensive power from Mel Rojas Jr. and Becco Gong. How confident are we in the Dinos tonight?
Yeah, I think I'd be pretty confident. Last time out, the Wiz were quite hot. They played these guys, I think it was just last weekend, and they managed a single tie out of 3 games, which was disappointing based on what they've done. For the season series as a whole, the Dinos are 7-1-1. They haven't really had any trouble with the Wiz. Partially, I think, because the Wiz for most of the year had a bad pitching staff, and the Dinos can outscore anybody. I don't think they'll need to do much outscoring in this one. I think I have a pretty decent amount of faith in Drew Rosinski, even against Mel Rojas. Maybe he'll give up a couple solo homers to Rojas or something because nobody can shut him down these days. But he's had an excellent season, as you can see from that 2.06 ERA. Maybe not quite as good as that suggests, but he's been very, very much everything the Dinos could ask for. He's 9th among qualified starters in strikeout rate. So he puts away hitters among the best in the league. And he's been on an awesome run lately, just 2 total earned runs in his last 4 starts. It's his best stretch of the year, and he's easily a top 10 pitcher in the league. Probably would put him in the back of the top 5. So even on a team with Mel Rojas, I think he's going to do the job. Again, you look at those recent starts, and that recent stretch includes 7 scoreless against the Bears, 7 scoreless against the Heroes. And the Twins and Tigers are considerably worse, but not bad lineups. The Tigers aren't pretty good, but he did, even in his mediocre starts, like his previous one against the Wiz, a mediocre start for him is still 7 innings, 3 earned runs. So I think I'd be pretty confident in him, even with Mel Rojas on the other team. On the opposite side, William Cuevas is definitely an adequate foreign starter. I think he's good enough for what the Wiz are asking for from him, but not in the same tier, as you can see by that ERA. That ERA doesn't necessarily reflect how he's been playing lately. He's kind of been a tale of two seasons. He started out quite bad, 4 out of 5 bad starts, and then he missed nearly a month with a hip injury, which might have explained why he was really struggling earlier. I'm not sure if it was something he was battling all year, but when you look at the difference in his numbers before and after that gap, it really looks like it. 4 of his 5 since coming back have been quite good. You have 1 dud there against the Heroes, but the other 4 are everything you could ask for from a pitcher. So if that's the guy he is lately, he's definitely going to give Rucinski and the Dinos a run for their money. But I think the Dinos have enough about him. I think Rucinski is better than even the good version of Cuevas, and the Dinos lineup is even more loaded than the Wiz, though they don't have Mel Rojas, but they've got probably 6 of the 8 best hitters in the matchup or something, 5 of the 8, somewhere like that. They're just a loaded lineup top to bottom. And I think it's going to be enough, though I do think it's a quality game. Two good lineups, 2 good pitchers. Probably the best game on the slate for sure.
Yes, I'm excited for it. And Barry here asking about the first 5, backing Rucinski. And when you look at these numbers, he's gone. I think the last time he hasn't gone 6 or more innings was way back on May 12th. So you're looking at him to be in the game for those 5 innings and shut down that Wiz offense. Do you think those Rojas, if he does hit a solo home run or 2 against Rucinski, that those could come early in the game against him, or that he might come on late against that Dinos bullpen?
Yeah, I mean, the bullpens of both these teams are quite weak, and the starters are both pretty good. So I would definitely like the under for the first 5. I think if the total starts getting high, it's going to come late if these teams play it for him. So definitely would be quite confident in the under early. Probably more confident in the early under than the overall under, just because you never know when you get into a bullpen. But I think given that these 2 starters are good enough and should probably have a good shot to pitch 6 or 7 innings each, I think I would side Dinos and side under overall in this one. Unusual to pick the under with these 2 lineups, but I think these 2 pitchers are good enough for it.
Yeah, picking the Dinos on the under doesn't always seem that good, especially when you see them putting up 6 runs a game on average. But you got these pitchers going tonight, and that looks like a good decision. AJ, I believe, a first-time viewer here, saying it's a great show. Thank you. We do appreciate it. We are taking your comments, your suggestions. We do appreciate that in game. So finishing up with this Dinos Wiz series, we talked about Mel Rojas and Beck Hogong. Is there much offense beyond that? You like the KT team total over 3.5? Do you like that, Eric, beyond the offensive abilities of Rojas and Beck Hogong?
That's an interesting one. I mean, what do they average per year? They average 5.8 runs, so that's over 2 runs lower than what they normally do. I can't see Rucinski giving up much more than 3, and I would expect him to give up about 2. So it's just a question of, in those 1 or 2 innings, do you think the Wiz can score 2 runs? That would be how I would think about it. If you think they can get 2 runs in at most 3 innings off the bullpen, I'd be happy enough with the over. They do have a good lineup. I definitely wouldn't rule them out scoring a few runs there. 3.5 is just a pretty low under. So I think I would probably side with the over there, just because there's multiple ways there to get there. The one is Rucinski has a rare bad game, and they get there off him alone. And the other would be the bullpen is shaky as usual. So I think I don't hate that. Although I'm not sure if by saying that I'm not leaving a whole lot of room for the overall score to be under, which is what I'm picking. So I guess come down pretty close to the fence on that one. But I think there's multiple paths to them hitting the over. So I wouldn't hate that one by any means.
Yeah, because when you see Rucinski on the bump, I would think, taking the other team's team total would not be a good idea, especially what he's done recently, not allowing 4 more runs since May 12th, again, in that horrible start, or relatively horrible start, but it was against the Wiz. And Barry here mentioning that the Wiz, against that bullpen that you said was kind of okay for the Dinos, anything's pretty much possible. So we'll have to see what's up there. Sean, another regular here in the KBO show, welcome back in, saying the Wiz scare me because they are explosive and they're rolling. So maybe not as confident as you would be if Rosinski was facing off against anyone else that didn't quite have that KT Wiz level of explosive offense. So, Eric, what are we going with here for pick number 5 and 6 on KBO Daily on worldbaseballpick'em.com?
I'm going to go with the Dinos and the under. So again, that path to the over is, I think, based on the bullpen. So if you think if you take the over, that's what you're counting on, and you certainly wouldn't be dumb for doing that, I don't think.
Yeah, big bullpen dependent, which in the KBO is not always the best idea because those can be pretty crazy. So we'll have to see. Josh, welcome back in the KBO show. Yes, we are live. So glad to have you still on. Yes, we are going to be on. We don't know what's going on long term with Major League Baseball, but KBO seems to be a sure thing, and we are here to give you that edge. A lot of people, a lot of the sharps are on Major League Baseball. Not a lot of edge. The biggest sharp right here, right below me, Eric Halterman. Follow him on Twitter. He's got that predictive ability. So we're breaking down all the games, and Eric, I love the picks, and the fans love you too. So let's move on to our next series for pick 7 and 8. That's a game. It's a series that we'll have to talk a lot about because it's again the battle for last place. SK and Hanwha are two teams we love to hate for just how bad they are. The Eagles still not at 20 wins, 50 losses though. That's so bad. But yet the Wyverns are not that much better, barely above 20 wins. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, I think we should probably talk about this one for a couple hours. I don't think anybody's going to want to watch Dodgers Giants. I think Wyverns Eagles is where it's at. So break down every single stat from every single player on both teams. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Not much with either of these two teams. Although both pitchers, I think, are a little bit interesting, especially for fantasy purposes, because they're shaky pitchers who do at least get strikeouts, which is the kind of thing that I tend to be a big fan of for fantasy reasons, because usually strikeout guys get their strikeouts, and they might also get blown up. Just look at Max Scherzer on opening day today. He struck out 10 or something in 5 innings when I turned it off, and also gave up 4 runs. Obviously, it's a little bit better than these guys, but again, fantasy players who had him probably didn't hate it because they at least got the strikeouts. That's the kind of thing you might get from these guys, just with a little bit different quality of stuff and opponent. Both guys, yeah, again, strike people out, give up too many walks, and give up too many runs. So that makes some decent fantasy plays. Makes it a little bit tough to say what's going to happen from trying to figure out how many runs are going to be scored in this one, because the lineups aren't necessarily good enough to score a ton of runs off these guys. Both pitchers are actually coming off of pretty strong stretches. Shiwan Zhang for the Eagles hasn't allowed more than 2 runs in any of his last 6 starts. And Jung-Hoon Park for the Wyverns has the same stretch over his last 4, which is better than you'd think given those ERAs and, given the teams they play for. So I think given that the lineups are quite bad and given that these guys have at least something in their skill set, again, they're solidly above average strikeout guys. So if you get guys who have at least something, who are on good runs and against the 2 worst lineups in the league, I think the under is actually pretty safe despite those kind of sketchy ERAs.
So we're already looking at the under because of these 2 bad teams. Offensively, is there anything of value? We see both foreign players batting in that 4 hole with our expected lineups here on rotowire.com. I look at Jamie Romack and I think, maybe he could bring in an RBI, bring in one of the Chois for a run or 2. because what he did last game was kind of impressive. It was a little while ago because of the rainouts, but home run, 3 hits, 2 runs scored. Is he maybe turning things around here past couple of games on a 3-game hit streak, or is this maybe just a little luck?
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, he's been pretty good for several years over there, and he was battling some minor injury issues, a sore elbow. As you see, he missed a couple games. When you see some bad games right around a brief absence, I think you could generally chalk that up to being likely injury related. Obviously, small sample size and all that, we never know for sure. But I think it makes some sense that he seemed to be battling something and he's back to his usual self now. That core of the Wyverns lineup isn't bad. I mean, Choi, their number 3 hitter, by far the best of the 3 Chois that lead off that lineup. Don't get those confused for fantasy reasons. Make sure you get number 3 hitter Choi. Is one of the best home run hitters in KBO history. So Choi, Romac, Dongmin Han, who we have projected to hit 6th. He's a lefty. He'll get the platoon advantage in this one. He's a power hitter who will at least hit homers, even if he's shaky at other things. That trio is a set that I'd be interested in. Again, I've liked some things from both pitchers lately, but they also pretty bad ERAs overall. So it's kind of thing where I would probably recommend them for cheap pitching options, but if you're not using that specific guy, they're shaky enough that I'd be totally happy loading up against them. So yeah, that core there, and then Brandon Barnes for the Eagles. It's been okay. I think he started off good 2 games and then bad 2 games. It's a tiny sample size, but got to figure give him the benefit of the doubt for now, I would say. Again, with pretty much every foreign hitter, we want to let them prove that they're actually not good at this level. Because, again, small sample size is a thing we talk about all the time in baseball. It doesn't get a whole lot smaller than 4 games. So given that the Eagles brought him over for a reason, I mean, his reports of a swing change was hitting for more power despite being in his early to mid-30s in the minors. There's presumably something there. And again, given that Junghoon Park for the Wyverns historically hasn't been that good over this year, even though he's had a couple of decent starts recently, definitely somebody I'd be interested in playing for daily fantasy.
In case you're just tuning in, this is KBO Chats Live. Get some questions about Twitter, what our Twitter handles are. You can follow us on Twitter. Overall, the entire show at RotoWire KBO. And if you can kind of see it right under our images, at Sports by Pasco and at Eric_Halterman for all our analysis throughout the KBO week outside of just Monday and Thursday. So we'll get to your picks. That's you, the fans, getting some questions about the total and the battle of the toilet bowl here, the race to last place between these 2 teams. But just with Barnes, and when you look at this Eagles team, they're not a big offensive juggernaut. They're one of the worst. But I am encouraged by, a foreign player like Barnes proving he can at least have a multi-hit game in the KBO. I mean, it is an entire new culture shock, a guy under COVID coming into a new country, playing professional baseball, trying to, do well, and that he hasn't really done well, and prove that, he's a good player because he hasn't done that here in the States. So I'm encouraged by that a little bit. But in terms of that impacting tonight, what's your perspective on the total here? You mentioned good pitchers, but is Barnes and Romac enough to get that over?
I think not. I think if you're not playing Junghoon Park on DraftKings, which, by the way, we should mention, sadly, it's just DraftKings, it seems like, going forward. FanDuel, on their daily fantasy side, seems to have dropped KBO. It looks like they don't intend to bring it back this year. We'll see, but it seems like DraftKings is sticking with it, and FanDuel Sportsbook is keeping it. So we won't be able to do the play this guy on DraftKings, avoid him on FanDuel based on wildly different prices, which was true actually of Brandon Barnes. FanDuel had him priced as if he was expected to be elite as a foreign hitter with no track record. They just figured he's going to be awesome. Whereas he was extremely cheap on DraftKings, and he still is. So he's somebody I would be interested in playing if I'm not playing Jung-Hoon Park myself. But overall, I see something with both pitchers, which is enough for me to take the under. I think two pitchers on hot streaks with something to them, I think that beats 2 weak lineups.
When you talk about weak lineups, they are the weakest. Eagles, 3.3 runs per game. That sits 10th. Well, SK, over here on rotowire.com, ranking ninth, barely better than them, 3.9. So we like the under. Who are we leaning towards here? This one feels like a true pick'em here in World Baseball Pick'em. Who are you leaning towards? Wyverns, Hanwha.
I'm going to go Wyverns. I think there's just a little bit more about their lineup. There are a few more hitters that I like a bit more over the course of the season. They've been a little bit better, but it's mostly going to be which of those pitchers sticks with their strong recent form and which regresses to what they were like earlier in the year.
All right, DX taking the Eagles maybe, but we'll have to see. Barnes being solid, if not spectacular, Sean saying. Always great to get Sean's perspective in here. And SK, last one here on this series. Over or under 4.5 for the first 5? How much do you believe in that team total for the Wyverns?
Yeah, the only thing I really like about either of these teams is that their starters have been decent recently. So I think I would go under early on. I think those two have a chance to be some of the better players in the game. So I think I go under early.
Okay, under early. And we are now approaching our last series here. Samsung taking on Kia, Lions, and Tigers. Oh my. Aaron Brooks. Finally, a normal-looking ERA. I was getting worried here that just KBO ERAs are just permanently stuck at 4.5 or 5. But Aaron Brooks, well under 3, sitting right about 2.5. I would think that would be an easy lock for the Tigers, but maybe not. The Lions have been resting while the Kia has actually played, game 1 and 2, actually of the series. They actually haven't been rained out. So maybe that will play in. What are we looking at here with this series?
Right, they did get rained out once. Everybody got rained out in the last slate, but they played the Eagles for the only game that went forward 2 days ago. And yeah, I think Aaron Brooks should be enough to give the Tigers the edge in this one. He's one of the best pitchers in the league. Above average strikeout numbers, 20.5%. Not elite, but good enough to give you the upside to look for there. And he is elite in terms of avoiding walks. Only 4.5% walk rate is 4th best among qualified starters. So I think he's right up there with the best in the league. He's got a case as best on the slate right next to Rajinski. I think there's not a whole lot separating those two. I think he's somebody I trust a lot, enough to pretty much completely avoid the Lions hitters who aren't all that exciting to begin with. Choi for the Lions is mediocre, average strikeout and walk kind of guy. Doesn't pop off the page, but isn't going to cause too many problems. He's on a pretty decent run, 4 strong starts out of his last 5. And being a lefty does help him against the Tigers' top bats, Preston Tucker and Hyung-Woo Choi. But the Tigers don't lean quite that lefty-heavy overall. But getting the help against those two is something. Chang-Jin Lee, their leadoff hitter for the Tigers, and Juan, their cleanup guy, would be plays I'd be somewhat interested in. Chae-Hung Choi isn't somebody he's not somebody you'd pick on necessarily, but he's not somebody that would scare me away from the Tigers' good righties. And both these lineups are pretty mediocre. The Lions have been slightly better throughout the year, which is kind of weird because it doesn't seem like they have the same top-end talent. Jawook Koo has been quite good. Wouldn't play him against Aaron Brooks, but he's been quite good overall. And Sang-Soo Kim is quite a good leadoff man. He gets on base a ton, can run. Just no power, but he's the leadoff guy. That's kind of what you expect. So there's a little bit there, but not enough to challenge Brooks much. And I think Aaron Brooks carries this one for the Tigers.
I'd have to agree. Brooks, one of the best in the game Probably not the best, especially not the best tonight with Rosinski going, but definitely respectable. Do you think that translates overall into the first five under 4.5? I know Preston Tucker, he can get hot, and he could easily hit that total in the first five with his RBIs alone, but maybe not recently, maybe not this, current incarnation of Preston Tucker. Maybe that was a little bit earlier in the season. But is there any thought on that first five total?
Right. Preston Tucker has been a few different guys throughout the year. He was awesome pretty recently, hitless in 3 of his last 4, but we'll have to wait a bit before we say he's definitely slumping again. I think Brooks isn't going to give up many at all in those first few, and Choi is decent enough that I don't think he's going to get blown up by the Tigers. I don't think they're going to score 5 by themselves. Again, especially because their best 2 hitters will get the platoon disadvantage in Preston Tucker and Kyung-Woo Choi. So I think I'd go under early, and I think I'd go under overall, based mostly on Brooks and also on the fact that the Tigers just don't have much of a lineup. So I think there's a decent chance Jae-Hyung Choi extends his streak of good starts there. I think it could be close to a pitcher's duel, and I think Brooks is going to win that duel.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Choi, pretty good pitcher. Brooks, better. And Kia, when you look at them and you consider them, being, a middle of the pack team, playoff level, they have an offense that's ranked 7th, though, in terms of runs per game. It gets a little better when you look at, batting average, slugging percentage, but still not what you expect. So I do agree with that under there. So we had a question here about the hot pick of the day, and we will get to our top 3. But wrapping up KBO Daily, taking 10 picks on the 5 games, both money line and a total. What are we liking? Samsung or Kia?
I go Tigers under because I think the best player in this game is Aaron Brooks, and I think he's going to carry them to a win. It is a pretty low under, though. A couple of these where we're going under are low. I think that generally been set pretty well, but I think Brooks is good enough that he'll handle most of that himself.
Yes, for those of you new to the KBO, 8.5 is a low under. I know that might not be for Major League Baseball, but I like the picks. Aaron Brooks going for the Tigers, one of the best, and that Wyverns Eagles series, 2 horrible offenses. So I'm pretty confident there. You can find us on Twitter at RotoWire KBO. Entire show there. So we're submitting these here on World Baseball Pick'em. And now, of course, look, shows up the Twitter here. But going back for our hot pick here, as Michael is mentioning, that's one or more where we make 3 picks, and as long as one of them or more is correct, your streak continues. So wrapping up the show, Eric, what are your top 3 picks for tonight?
I'm going to say Dinos as the top one, even though the Wiz have some great hitters in Mel Rojas, good offense overall, and a pretty decent starter. I think Dinos have the better lineup than the Wiz and the better starting pitcher in Drew Rucinski. So I'll go with that, number 1. I'll go with we can mix in the over-unders, right, as part of this?
Yes, of course.
I think the Bears Twins over, I think those pitchers are quite shaky. I always think Kwon Yu is going to give up more runs than he actually does, but it feels like this might be the time. And even if it isn't, I think the Bears, they've lit up Cha twice recently. I think they could do it again. I think even if they get a good performance from Yu, I think they could well get, 8 or 9 runs themselves. And then I think I'll go with the Heroes for number 3. A little bit scary given that Tate Choi was quite bad, really bad, as we talked about in his last 2. But he's supposed to be a solid mid-rotation or better starter, and he was that through his first 10 starts of the year. He's had a little time off to rest, and he's facing one of the worst lineups in the league, whereas his opponent, Saewon Park, is never been more than mediocre, and the Heroes have a better lineup. So I think Heroes should have a pretty good shot here. Although, again, placing too much faith in Tate Choi, given what he's been lately, is going to be a little bit frightening, but I think trust the longer track record from both him and that lineup.
If you're just looking at recent success with Choi, might be a little bit more than frightening there. 7 earned runs and 4. So we'll have to see. The Giants, of course, they're using their position player on a defensive-minded Dixon Machado. So maybe a chance for the Heroes to sneak out with a victory. And you're picking against Wu-Chan Shah, who's back in the bigs, KBO bigs, that is. So that's the picks we got right here. Hefty over, but it's a KBO. We could easily see. I think we saw 28 runs in one of these games before, so I think 11.5 is reasonable. You can submit that here, RotoWire KBO on Twitter. We got the bio, worldbaseballpick'em.com for you to sign up and make your own picks. Right here, it's loading. There we go. All right, that's just about it. We got the Giants-Dodgers game, Major League Baseball, coming up here. Nice to get this KBO show in during a rain delay for the Nationals Yankees. Great to see you guys coming back. MLB, if you're looking for picks and daily fantasy advice, Major League Baseball is pretty much covered. Everyone's on that. No one's on KBO. We got you. Eric, he knows his stuff, and we'll see what's going on with that. Any other last notes, injury-wise, anything else the fans should be aware of before they lock in their fantasy lineups?
The main things happening at the catcher position, Yuji Young just hit the injured list with a back issue. Seems like he's got minor issues all the time. That's the Dinos catcher who was second in MVP voting last year, one of the best players in the league. Has been quite good despite, again, nagging injuries of one kind or another all year. So the catcher pool loses its best member, but it gets back the second best catcher, at least over the course of most of the season, which is Dongwon Park of the Heroes. He's returning from a brief absence with a back issue. So we at least have one strong catcher there. That's more or less it for the big things. Adrian Sampson battling a thigh, going to be out for a few weeks. That might explain why he's been bad for most of the year, or it might be unrelated, not sure. But either way, we won't see him for a bit.
Just subtly roasting Adrian Sampson right there, the former Texas Ranger. But yeah, he has been quite bad when you look at his stats this year. I like it. Sean, you're making his picks as well. You can lock those in at worldbaseballpick'em.com. Dinos, Heroes, and a team playing against Hanwha. Sounds pretty good. Michael likes it. That's how it works. We like it. Everyone's liking those picks. And that's all we got. Thank you guys for tuning in. Great to see you guys tune in on opening day. Well, KBO here, we've still been going. We're finding our flow, and Eric is in that vibe. So that's all we got. Be sure to tune in Monday. I believe we'll be back regular time, 7 o'clock. We'll be sure to tweet that out if anything does indeed change. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.